There's also a load of new technologies. It feels like the whole front end experience right now is going to be disrupted. And I definitely don't think, what everyone's saying on LinkedIn about the website's dying. I think it's just going to move really fast in how it'll change it.
You're listening to Inside Commerce, a weekly e-com strategy, technology and CX focused podcast hosted by experienced digital consultants and re-platform specialists James Gedd and Paul Rogers. Get insights into e-com strategy and leading brands, hear from industry thought leaders and leading tech vendors with practical advice to help you improve your online CX. This episode is sponsored by WorldPay. This week, Paul and I are guest free, and we're talking about something that we rant and ramble about quite a lot to each other in person on Slack every week, which is around how are emerging e-commerce trends and existing well-embedded e-commerce trends and changes in customer shopping behavior and changes in retailer and e-commerce brand growth priorities influencing tech stack decisions, the type of tech people are prioritizing, where they're investing, and where they're like prioritizing money. So that is what we're going to talk about today, because Paul and I both work with a different mix of businesses, which means that we get complementary views on the tech that people are focused on, also what capabilities they're building out in-house versus where they're investing in specialist third parties. And we thought this would be quite an interesting, Paul and me rambling at you on what we're seeing. And anything that you're seeing differently, do reach out and DM us on LinkedIn or contact us. We'd love to hear. Anything you want to add to that, Paul, or is that a good enough setup?
No, I think that's it, really, isn't it? I'm sure there'll be some other tangents along the way.
Inevitable tangential work with us, definitely. So let's start. The first one I'm going to pull out is loosely titled PIMS and AI content generation, and the two together. So I think the context of the trends that are driving refocus in this area, because it's not new. I think for me, it's more about refocus. And then the tooling is slightly different now, is that we've got the big growth of AI search and product discovery. You've got all of the deals going on, the announcements around like Google's protocol, Shopify working with OpenAI, the growth of agentic commerce within these LLMs, and the percentage of traffic to retail sites that originate from AI-generated prompts is increasing, albeit off of a small base for most people. That is obviously creating a renewed demand for better structured product data. And some businesses have always done this well, and others, inevitably, you get product data debt creeping in as people hack things in to get around system limitations, and then the data over time gets more and more corrupted and less structured. And I'm going through a big project with a furniture retailer at the moment where we're trying to fix some of this. And actually, those trends in the market are driving people to realize they've got to focus better on that, because if not, then it might not be impacting them today materially, but in 12 months time, that shopping growth in ChatGPT, I saw data, and the last 6 months shopping prompts have gone up 2% points for share of prompts. And that's going to carry on growing. So actually, if they don't act now, in 12 to 18 months, they're going to be materially impacted. So I'm seeing tools like Emphas. We know that the founders the guys like Vida is doing a really good job of creating a more modern version of a PIM, embedding the AI tooling to help with enrichment of data. It's integrated close into the Shopify ecosystem first. But I'm also seeing businesses investing in tools like that, but I'm seeing them do it alongside using AI content generators. So I've got one client using Describely, which is helping them generate content for products, which then gets pushed into the PIM, which is then being used to ensure that the data is normalized, standardized, and pushed into the right systems, not just e-com. And then I'm also seeing a greater use of tooling, whether it's a ChatGPT or another LLM, to help people with ideation and help them structure content before being managed in PIM. So I'm seeing quite a mix of tooling around this area. What are you seeing?
Yeah, so I think probably similar overall trends. So I think Emphas is something that a lot of our clients have bought. I think people really like it. And I think they've also now started supporting like broader content rather than just product content, which I think a lot of our clients are benefiting from or will benefit from. I actually think one of the reasons people buy MFAS in our context is more translations. So I think they've done really well to kind of optimize that a little bit beyond like the standard translations you might get out of ChatGPT and Claude and whatever else. And also kind of retain a level of tone of voice. So I think that's typically why people buy MFAS. And it's just really intuitive. I then think that a lot of our clients are just doing generative content stuff themselves. So we've got a number of clients that have built stuff with Claude and then essentially just trained it around kind of tonality and kind of use of certain words and all of that kind of stuff. And I think that over the last few months has got a lot easier to do. So that's something we've been playing around with a lot. And I want to do more testing with like ad copy and stuff like that. So I think that would be a big one. And then you mentioned Airtable, or you've kind of got Airtable written down in the notes. I think that we're still seeing a lot of people using Airtable, and like Represent would be our kind of main client or an example, and maybe Current Body as well, who use it really effectively. So I still think those types of solutions when you've got kind of different channels and different workflows and things. But as you say, probably outside of that is then where a lot of the automation's happening. The only thing I was going to add to this was I think more of our clients are starting to test things with visual content. And I think there are a lot of new entrants in that market. So I think that is something that will get a lot better. So there's a few now that do like you essentially take one model and then take a series of shoots, and then they'll roll out content for like the whole catalog. Set is one that we're looking at, but there's loads of them. So I think that's another one that's quite interested in this space. And then there was one other thing I was going to say here. I can't remember what it was that I thought was quite interested in this area. I think one, in fact, I think I forgot. Yeah, I've gone off on too many tangents already. And but yeah, I think this area has gone, in my opinion, in a very short period of time, it's gone from something where people didn't trust to something that is like actively being used now. And I think it was getting better and better.
The next stage for me though is I think there has to be a layer of AI governance involved in the business, because what I see is you just see different parts of a business using different tooling for generative content. And some of that content is, much more customer facing than others, visible across all channels, versus just on part of a website. And it also involves using some of those AI toolings to put, customer data in, which has a GDPR compliance implication. And there needs to be, I think, better scrutiny around the content uses, how it's being used, what can and can't be used, because there are open versions of tooling and then there are licensed, paid or closed versions, which give you the great security. So I think we are getting into an era where people cannot ignore the governance side of the generative tooling much longer, and the AI tools used to clean. And I see this so linked to that PIM content, product data cleaning is something increasingly where I'm using AI massively. I'm doing it on non-GDPR data, basically. Like, I wouldn't put customers' data into these tools, but product data, and being able to use, whether it is Google Sheets and Gemini or it's a ChatGPT, to clean, structure and cleanse and speed up some of the work so that you're less dependent on license-based tools. There's so much work going on at the moment with using AI tool, and it's the difference between 6 months ago is huge for me.
Ready to grow your business online? With WorldPay e-commerce, you can deliver fast, secure payments your customers love, backed by global reach and real people-powered support. Scale with confidence and enhance your customers' experience with WorldPay e-commerce.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that'll be an interesting area. I feel like people are typically quite careful with the customer data piece, but even the content side, like I could imagine that, you know, if people get carried away, there's lots of risk there as well. And I've definitely seen some like, bad examples of like translation automation, stuff like that. But yeah, I think that's just natural kind of progression really for the area and for like the vendors and the teams and all aspects.
Yeah, it's like commercially sensitive data. Like, you know, people who will put financial data into an AI in order to create a structured report of it. Like, do A, B, and C to this data for me. I want this view, but still it's sensitive data. So you've got to have those controls and check mechanisms around it.
I think the really other thing I was going to say with in this area, because kind of combining this with the AI efficiency one, I feel like the no-code stuff's getting a lot better. And we've been playing like, so visually, I saw Nick building out kind of different components that usually he'd use our developers for. But now, you know, he's able to like kind of build tests and build kind of variations of tests with purely prompts, which I think is impressive. And I think there's a lot of tools getting better in that space. And I think the other thing that's getting quite interesting, and I saw Kelly from Pipe 19 talking about this, and I've talked about it a lot in the past, is I think that the no-code stuff will soon start to drive personalization and dynamic content. And there's a couple of big startups, so CoFrame and Spangle are the two that I've been looking at a little bit, that are starting to push more like genuinely dynamic page building and content building based on all of the kind of signals that are available. And I personally think that's going to take off pretty quickly. I think particularly given how much money people spend on like top of funnel traffic and everything else, I feel like the opportunity to then dynamically change content to better serve the user and better sell product at different levels, I think that'll become a pretty big trend in this area.
So let's stop on that, because I've not looked into CoFrame myself. For people listening who don't get what it is, what is CoFrame? How does it differ to existing tooling, and how does it sit alongside your existing like page builder, CMS, whatever you're using?
So I think there's a few of these tools, and essentially what they would do is, based on the information that's given to them, they would dynamically build and adapt pages. So rather than, you know, building landing pages, like in a bespoke way, and then tying those landing pages to segments or like kind of groups of traffic, this would essentially automate that process. But I think that it's different to a lot of the other tools that kind of touch digital experience and content management, but I personally think all of them will be going this way soon. So I feel like that whole space is going to move towards one, no code content building, and kind of that kind of replacing a need for like the bottom half of front end development. But also I think, dynamic content and landing pages will be something that we see a lot more of.
But is this a CMS, or is this a optimization tool that takes content and adapts it?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I would say it takes, like the ones that I've seen, take content and adapt it. So it's more like they would serve content that could be housed somewhere else, if that makes sense.
I get you. So it's not replacing, it's using data signals taken, but is it doing the gen bit? So I'm assuming you put data in that says these are the boundaries in which we want you to manage content. It then generates the content, does it?
It has the ability to do both, but it's not, it's more adapting, if you see what I mean.
Oh, okay. So adapting the page, what's on the page.
Yeah. And potentially, yeah, exactly that. And essentially all that these tools are trying to do is I think long term builds one-to-one content. So literally I'm coming to the site, you know X about me. What's put in front of me is, dynamic. And then short term, reduce the time that's needed to personalize content across the site.
I think this is really interesting. So thanks for flagging this tool because I've not come across it. And I've had lots of conversations with content personalization people over the years. And there are existing platforms that do it to a limited degree where you can personalize content sections, but they're not, they're doing it based off segments or data prompts, but it is, you have an image, we can choose which version of an image to serve. But that, really it's content segmentation rather than personalization. But the dynamic bit to me is interesting because if I take a PDP template and you have your standard hierarchy, and actually if you've got a considered purchase, you've worked with a big furniture brand recently, and you've got lots of additional range, designer, brand, feature-based content, and you've got a really long page, and that lots of people don't get that far, but some people need it. But for some people, the tech specs are most important. For another person, the visuals are most important, or the in-room lifestyle. Having a tool that can reorder page content and hierarchy based on the customer signals, knowing that this person fits this kind of segment and this kind of person needs this data. That to me is where a content personalization and optimization engine can add so much value, provided the data is being tracked accurately. You can see what impact it's having on like add to basket rates, conversion rates.
Exactly. I think we've seen some success on the page side of this around landing page building and then adapting content on PDP based on essentially just top, middle, bottom of funnel. So adding content for net new, low intent traffic, removing content for people that look like they just want to buy. But I think this will accelerate and then people will be able to do it at scale. And I think quite a few journeys will start to be impacted by all of this technology. So the other thing I was going to mention is I think Swap are now public with their agentic tool. And I always forget how to pronounce the brand. And I'm not going to try and butcher it because I will say it wrong. So that the luxury fashion brand that have essentially built their own kind of capability to create more of a agent-led experience on their site. So essentially, and Swap is the same principle. So you would essentially go to into this journey, or you would like to go into a journey where you say, do you want to interface with our agentic personal shopper, or do you want to browse the site as normal? You then go into the agentic experience, and you've essentially then got a dialogue via voice and text where you can ask questions and have like a proper experience. And that agentic agent is then in a position to sell in a certain way, upsell, collect more information, which can then enrich customer properties and be pushed into a CDP or whatever else. There's now examples that Swap are now public with it. And I think there's some other startups moving in this direction. So, and that's just an example of how kind of the capability that's coming out of AI is able to almost replicate the in-store experience. And, Swap also has a virtual try-on experience, which is super strong. There's also a load of new technologies in that space that I've seen that are really, really strong. There's one that I wrote down yesterday called, can't find it, but we'll put it in the notes maybe afterwards. But yeah, I think just it feels like the whole front end experience right now is going to be disrupted. And I definitely don't think, what everyone's saying on LinkedIn about the website is dying. I think it's just going to move really fast in how it'll kind of changes.
I find it interesting because the technology is there, but I often think the technology is trying to push a behavior that isn't yet there from the mass market of consumers. I think having the ability is important for those who do want it, but I question how many people want this way of navigating versus are happy with a really well designed, well functioning website that is available. I don't know. Maybe I'm just behind the curve on this, but it feels like there's a need. There's the industry trying to push a way of doing things that isn't necessarily volume driven.
So that's my immediate response as well. So like when I first saw the swap tool, and I've kind of been giving them bits of advice, I was originally quite skeptical on the market fit. And I was exactly the same as you. And my other thinking was like, a lot of, traffic is expensive and you want to push it into the most performant experience possible. But the more I kind of saw it, and the more that I started to think about kind of how consumers might change given, kind of particularly Google and ChatGPT, and how many people are kind of going through those experiences, and then started to see the benefits of potential virtual try on as part of the experience. And also kind of seeing how you can maybe navigate a catalog in a slightly different way. I feel like it's going to start with niche use cases, and that could well be either more complex purchases like bridal parties, for example, or it could be more niche audiences like repeat purchasers that have more knowledge to be able and, looking for something more specific. And then I think it could potentially get a little bit more mainstream. But yeah, I feel like it's more just that I think the space will change over time.
I'm totally with you on intent-led, but understand it user intent rather than coming to this. Like if someone comes to the sign, you have no idea who they are. It's a leap of faith to think they want to go straight into this curated. But I totally get it. If you come from a very specific campaign source, which is about, whether you said bride or whatever, that ability to then have a curated journey that is linked to that because you understand where they are in that path, that I totally get, because I think that could be really, really positive, because then you can have the prompts that are available on the screen as very specific to that user need.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think for me, where this should get to relatively soon is you essentially have both journeys represented, and then you essentially have an agentic mode where you can actually do a lot more than just buy. Like you could go through a return journey. You could, ask really detailed questions around different things, but you kind of have it in like co-pilot mode almost. That's kind of how I think it should go at some point. And I think that probably applies to quite a lot of the internet as well.
Yeah. I think the important thing for me, though, thinking with the ecom team's hat on as well, is having something that's truly agentic and AI driven that can learn and recommend and suggest is really useful. But having the ability to curate, because there are certain navigation paths and certain context that you want to push to people based on where they are or what their intent is. I think that's your critical piece, rather than the AI deciding all for you, because there has to be that balance between automation versus curation.
Completely agree. And I think all of these agentic tools will allow you to merchandise still, and there'll still be like a matrix behind the scenes that like ingests like critical data and then allows you to essentially merchandise based on rules and whatever else. But I also think that it's like, and I think if we continue to talk about it, we'd both come to the same conclusion, which is that right now as a tiny use case for this, it'll probably get to here, but you need to be able to support both like discovery and those experiences where people kind of want to go through a different journey. And I think that's probably where it'll end up, personally.
It's, to me, in my head, I just think this is dynamic product selectors, is what I'm seeing in terms of how things are trying. It's basically trying to get people to product, but in a more engaging way, rather than here's a collection, here's a PLP, here's a product page, here's some recommendations, or here's a custom landing page. It definitely feels quiz-based to me, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because like a product quiz style stuff can work so well at increasing like conversion rates.
Yeah. And I think, kind of guided selling. And I think, to be honest, I feel like for the last you think the last 3 years, such a high proportion of the average brand's time and money has gone into getting the right traffic to a site. And I feel like, it's just like become like the average online experience is so bottom of funnel, and it's just a usable, PLP and PDP experience, maybe search. And I do feel like, even like one of the things that I think is probably missing for the brands that are spending, $500,000 a year on creative, and then, 6 to 12 million a year on top of funnel traffic. And yet there's no consideration around like the landing page and like what you'll put there front of someone. That I feel like all of that stuff's just kind of up for grabs, and I think it'll move quickly now.
I really do like the idea, and I know we kind of like hijacked our planned discussion points with this, but it's just really important is what I really like the idea is for me, coming into the homepage, it's much harder to gauge that intent because it's a very generic landing page, even if you've got campaign source IDs. But if you are in a specific part of a site, I'm thinking about the furniture brand where there is like 3D visualizers for sofa configuration and fabric selection. If you're landing into a specific part of that sofa journey, the ability to on that page to have very specific things of like, visualize your sofa or select your perfect fabric or whatever it might be. And not just here's our top products and here's the product grid and here's some content. The ability to have very specific commands as well as your standardized journey. I think that becomes incredibly powerful.
Completely agree. Yeah, I feel like it's that kind of co-pilot environment.
Exactly. Let's move on. So I'm going to skip. We were going to talk about product discovery engines, but the one that I'm most interested in, because I know you get quite involved in discussions, is CRM and loyalty. And I know that members of your team, like Connor, do a lot of work around the loyalty piece. I would like to hear your view on how you're seeing the market trend of where retailers are focused impacting tech. Because at a very high level, what I see is the consideration of CRM and loyalty broader rather than just, I need a loyalty platform, I've got a CRM tool in. How can I invest in tech that enables me to go across these areas? And also the omni-channel piece of, well, I don't want to have an online loyalty that isn't functioning in store. I want to be able to have that connectivity of data. I want my customer to be able to redeem in store, online, check balances. So I'm seeing definitely a rise in people thinking around Voyado. I've seen that come up in more businesses. Gorgeous is increasingly popular amongst some of my clients, especially in the Shopify world, because it's connectivity into the platform. And flow-based email marketing, SMS tools like Klaviyo, seeing more and more people embed those and do more and more of their campaign management. So that's my high level. Where are you seeing that CRM loyalty tech piece evolving?
So I think a lot of different areas kind of tie into one thing that's happening, in my opinion, right now. So I think a lot of our clients are moving away from probably more feature-rich, flexible, and this applies to commerce as well, really, but probably more on paper solutions that might win an old school RFP and moving to Klaviyo. So I feel like that is one thing we're definitely seeing. So people are essentially moving to Klaviyo because it's very simple, easy to use. They're moving faster and around AI in some of those areas, but probably most importantly, because if you hire a new person, the average person's used it. And also if you've got to build, 200 flows and a load of different emails, as part of an omni-channel loyalty program, you can go and outsource it for like $5,000. And I think the ecosystem around Klaviyo is just, to be honest, I think that can be so powerful that I think people are willing to compromise. So I think that's the starting point. I then think, so it still surprises me that loyalty, Klaviyo hasn't made a loyalty play, or there's kind of more solutions on the table that are very lightweight, kind of working alongside a Klaviyo and Shopify combination. But alongside Klaviyo, I think then people are investing in a loyalty solution And I feel like some of our clients have gone a bit more enterprise in that area and had mixed results. And then I feel like for me, someone like Yotpo is, still a really good solution. And then I think you've got some really good challenges, like Revo is one we've looked at. But I feel like pretty much every brand we work with now is either has an active loyalty program or is working on releasing a loyalty program. And a lot of those brands 5 years ago would have said that they would never, ever, ever touch loyalty. And I think it's more just the terms changed and, they're doing clienteling and they're, better reporting on different segments and they've just got different ways of communicating. And then I think the last one on this, so around the Omni piece, and I think you would probably agree because we're working with both of us have a furniture client. Both of them on paper would have never been eligible for Shopify POS. But we've got loads of other clients in this bucket. But I feel like people are moving, and it's exactly the same principle as CRM and the commerce platform. People are willing to buy Shopify POS because it makes overnight, you've got omni-channel loyalty, you've got omni-channel gift cards, you've got way better reporting. You're in a much better position to identify people in store because of how simple it is to extend POS. For me, it feels like people are simplifying their tech stack to get things actually kind of working together, achieve the fundamentals, and then investing in certain supplementary specialist tools around things like loyalty or kind of omni identification or whatever else.
Yeah, that omni-channel gift cards thing at face value sounds brilliant until you look at an existing legacy gift card provider and then what the pain involves of transferring over or using that instead of the native gift cards in. So I agree there are a lot of benefits, but there's a lot of pain in the transition for legacy businesses that are often omni-channel gift card and it's not straightforward. Bloody well is. But yeah, I think it's really interesting what you're saying. I'm seeing a lot more demand for. We want customer services to have a centralized view. We don't want them having to. I remember this from the days of working at House of Fraser, and I think the customer service team had something like 9 or 10 screens they'd have to use to access info to serve it to customers. But that's why tools like Gorgeous are popular and trending because you can push other orders, not just e-com orders in. So you can actually get your data flows, right? You can push POS orders, you can push external orders like third parties where you might be doing concession stuff through whether it's ERP or middleware. You can get those in and have visibility and have the ability for customer services to access and view and tickets raised centrally. But although that's not integrated into POS systems, you can still have a web browser within the POS tablets, etc., or computers and store where store staff can then access those views and look at the customer account as well. So although it's not 100% seamless, I think that tooling is just leap years ahead of where it was 5 years ago.
Yeah, I think we see the same trend around Gorgeous. I do think that'll be another area where there's more integration over the next couple of years, and it'll be interesting to see which technologies are kind of housing that almost.
Yes, exactly. And I think it's that embedded into proper ecosystems or platform level, and not just it's embedded into ecom, but for example, like a Gorgeous true integration into POS alongside ecom, then you've got something that's just so much more seamless for business teams. And that's not a criticism. And the reality is all these things evolve and it takes time because there are greater complexities when you're integrating into omni-channel environments. But yeah, so that's an important one. And Klaviyo, I find it interesting that because I work with, I guess, some more traditional, more complex businesses, but I'm seeing more and more switching towards Klaviyo as well. It's come up more and more, and there's fewer, as you were saying, I think that's the interesting change. There are fewer RFPs where I'm looking at 3 or 4 different vendors. It's people have made the decision, and they are then spending the time doing the due diligence on how the implementation will work, what the implications are for the campaigns, the flows, the event data tracking that needs to drive it, the migration. So there's definitely a flip in approach there.
Completely agree.
One other one I want to pick up, because I know it's something that you guys do a lot of work with your clients on, is around the data analytics, data visualization, marketing tracking accuracy. Because I don't run marketing campaigns, I don't do performance marketing like the Josh's side of the business in Vivon, but I still have the conversations as part of my projects. And I'm definitely, I've seen more clients spending money on licenses now for visualization tools, whether it's a Polar Analytics, Suite Analytics, whereas previously people say, oh no, we don't need that. We got GA, we've got our BI, it's okay. Ecom teams knowing that adds a huge amount of value. And then the tracking accuracy. So the ability to track marketing accuracy, call it attribution, call it what you want. And I've seen more investment in tools like Northbeam, Corvidea has been coming up. Blotout is a new one that one of my clients raised me. But so that analytics tooling kit is increasing in the ecom teams.
Yeah. So I think that was a big trend and remains a big trend. So I think a lot of clients that we work with historically might have had or like lines in their budget for tracking or implementations that might be like GA in particular. Then on top of that, something like an Elevar or a Stape to like manage all of that tracking. And then obviously professional services around it. Then maybe some of the more like SMB, VI tools that are essentially just pulling data from other sources. Then a Triple L or a Northbeam for kind of marketing attribution. And then different teams in the business would then have completely different views on like which tools should be used, which sources of traffic are right, which attribution model is correct, et cetera, And I feel like now there's two things that our average client's doing. So I really like Demo or Demo, depending on how you pronounce it. I really like that tool. So it's probably the same cost of all of those other lines together on average. And they essentially have a really good BI tool, like deep, the ability to drill down, very deeply or whatever word I should be using there, against like key areas like the whole GP1, GP2, GP3 area by like, in quite a granular way against like different product categories, against countries, against marketing channels. But then they also have incrementality testing and they have like very deep MMM capability. And then you also have the ability to like see different attribution models in one place within kind of broader reports. So I think that I think both the tool is good, but I also think it forces businesses and different teams to think in the same way, because Demo has their own like opinionated way of measuring traffic and users and sessions. And essentially, if you buy that tool, all of the different teams are essentially using the same metrics, and there's a lot less confusion. So like and I think, it's also great from it's constantly developing it. They've got like the standard agentic offering that kind of everyone has now. And I think that their one is particularly good. So I think that's one route. The other one is building a data team. So other clients of ours, we've got 2 or 3 that have essentially still got those other tools, but they're, just investing in building their own stack and their own set of like business reports that kind of everyone is forced to use. I think that route is more expensive, but it also gives you a lot more flexibility, and you'd have like your merchandising team using that same tech stack, everything else, or reporting stack. But I would say like that, it feels like a lot more of our clients are here at that level now versus before, where they just have all these different sources and it's like a bit scrappy. But I think in general, like the average ecom director, head of ecom, CMO, marketing director, whatever else, has just got a lot smarter with reporting and measurement. And I think there's a lot more like challenging and a lot more investment in this area now.
Yeah. I think that's the key point, isn't it? Is reliability of the data and consistency. Because if you keep switching between tools and keep second guessing yourself, then you've got no accurate way of making decisions. And sometimes, and this comes back, to be honest, even years ago when attribution modeling was the terminology everyone used, the biggest decision point was pick a model, pick a methodology, and use it consistently until you discover or learn that it's not right and you need to adjust. But if you don't and you keep flicking between different data sets, you have it's not apples for apples, and you can't make any decisions. You can't look at trends. So I think that's a critical thing, isn't it? Everyone knowing that the data that they're using is reliable. That kind of brings us to the end. I know we could talk about loads more things. We always can do because we like to ramble. So for those listening, anything that today that we talked about that piques your interest, reach out. Anything you disagree with, shout at us. Anything we've missed that you think is a really important trend, tech, evolution area in e-com, do let us know, because we can't keep an eye on absolutely everything. It's moving so fast. There is so much tech out there, and we always want to know what's new and what's exciting. So please do reach out. And thanks as always for listening.
You're listening to the Inside Commerce podcast, hosted by experienced consultants James Gerd and Paul Rogers. Inside Commerce is your fast track to digital knowledge, featuring interviews with leading e-commerce retailers, industry thought leaders, and the C-suite of key tech companies to explore the latest in digital strategy, customer experience, and tech. Discover what the latest trends really mean and get practical advice based on experience to help fine-tune your e-com strategy and tech stack. Follow us on LinkedIn and reach out to James or Paul if you'd like to discuss an e-commerce project. We hope you enjoy the latest episode.